I watched the world end from 60 feet in the air. For 31 days, I sat in a 14 by 14-foot cabin, perched on top of a steel tower in the Cascade Mountains, and I watched civilization collapse through binoculars and a spotting scope. I saw the lights of Grayson go dark. I watched Highway 26 transform from a river of fleeing refugees into a graveyard of abandoned vehicles. I listened as voices on the radio went silent one by one, frequency after frequency falling into static until there was nothing left but the hum of empty airwaves. My name is Owen Hartwell. I am 38 years old, and for the past 7 summers, I have worked as a fire lookout for the US Forest Service. My job was simple: sit in a tower on a remote ridge, scan the horizon for smoke, and report any fires before they could spread. It was solitary work, the kind of job that attracts people who have reasons to avoid the world. I took it after my divorce, looking for silence and space, and I found that the isolation suited me. I grew comfortable with loneliness. I learned to find peace in the endless green of the forest and the rhythm of days measured by sunrise and sunset. I never imagined that my little tower would become the safest place on earth. I never imagined I would watch from above as everything below me died. I am writing this because I finally came down. After 31 days, I climbed down the ladder and walked into what remains of the world. I do not know how much longer I will survive out here, but before whatever happens next, I need someone to understand what it looked like from above. I need someone to know how fast it all fell apart and how little any of us could do to stop it. This is what I saw. Day 1 started like any other day at Ridgeback Fire Lookout. I woke before dawn, made coffee on the propane stove, and watched the sun rise over the mountains. The sky was clear, visibility excellent, the kind of morning that makes you grateful for a job that pays you to look at beautiful things. I did my routine scan of the horizon, checking for smoke columns, noting weather conditions, filling out the morning report that no one would ever read. Around midday, Ranger Bill Taggart came on the radio. Bill was my primary contact at Pinecrest Station, about 12 miles north of my position. He was a gruff man in his 50s who had been with the Forest Service longer than I had been alive. We talked most days, brief check-ins to confirm I was still breathing and had not fallen off the tower. That day, his voice had an edge I had never heard before. He told me there were reports of some kind of outbreak in the cities to the west. People getting sick, hospitals overwhelmed, something spreading faster than anyone could track. He said it was probably nothing, media hysteria, the kind of panic that blows over in a few days. But he wanted me to stay alert, to report anything unusual I saw from my position. I acknowledged and went back to my routine. I had heard about outbreaks before. They always sounded terrifying on the news and then faded into nothing. I figured this would be the same. That night, I noticed more lights than usual on Highway 26. The highway wound through the valley about 20 miles east of my tower, visible as a thin line of moving headlights on clear nights. Usually, the traffic was sparse after dark, just a few trucks and late travelers. That night, it looked like a solid river of light, flowing east, away from the cities. I did not think much of it. I went to sleep listening to the wind and the silence of the mountains. Day 2, the radio traffic increased. Dispatcher Louise, who coordinated communications for the Forest Service, sounded stressed in a way I had never heard. She was fielding calls from multiple stations, her voice tight and clipped. I caught fragments of other conversations bleeding through the frequencies. Words like attacks and bites and not staying down. I used my spotting scope to watch the highway. The traffic had become gridlocked overnight. Vehicles stopped bumper to bumper as far as I could see in either direction. Through the scope, I watched people getting out of their cars. Some of them were arguing, some of them were running. I could not tell what they were running from. Not yet. Day 3, I saw them for the first time. The highway was still gridlocked, but now many of the cars appeared abandoned, doors hanging open, belongings scattered on the pavement, no movement from the drivers. I scanned the scope along the line of vehicles and spotted figures walking between the cars. At first, I thought they were survivors, people looking for help or supplies. Then I noticed how they moved. Their gait was wrong, jerky and uncoordinated, like marionettes controlled by a drunk puppeteer. They stumbled and lurched, bouncing off cars, falling down and getting back up without any apparent awareness of their own bodies. I watched one of them walk directly into a guardrail, press against it for several seconds, then turn and walk in a different direction. I watched another one attack a person who was trying to push a stalled car off the road. The attacker moved faster than I expected, closing the distance in seconds, dragging the victim down. I was too far away to see the details, but I saw enough. I radioed Taggart. His voice was grim. He told me things had gotten bad in Grayson, that the town was being evacuated, that the ranger station was preparing to bug out to a more defensible position. He told me to stay put. He said the tower was probably the safest place I could be. Day 4, I watched the evacuation fail. Through my scope, I could see convoys of vehicles leaving Grayson, heading east toward the mountain passes. They moved in clusters, civilian cars mixed with a few military vehicles that must have come from somewhere. For a few hours, it looked like organized retreat, like someone had a plan. Then one of the convoys stopped on Highway 26, about 15 miles from my position. I watched through the scope as figures emerged from the tree line on both sides of the road. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, pouring out of the forest like ants from a disturbed nest. They swarmed the vehicles before anyone could react. I heard the gunfire, faint and distant, carried on the wind, a sound like popcorn popping very far away. It lasted for maybe 10 minutes. Then it stopped. The convoy did not move again. Day 5, I tried to contact Pinecrest Station. No response. I tried again an hour later, then again an hour after that. Nothing but static. Dispatcher Louise came on briefly, her voice shaking so badly I could barely understand her. She said Pinecrest had been overrun during the night. She did not know who was left. She gave coordinates for a supposed safe zone and told anyone listening to head there if they could. Then she went silent. I spent the rest of the day cycling through frequencies, trying to raise anyone. Other ranger stations, emergency services, amateur radio operators, anyone at all. By nightfall, no one was answering. I was alone. Day 6, the fires began. I woke to smoke on the horizon, rising from the direction of Grayson. Through my scope, I could see buildings burning, flames spreading from structure to structure, with no one to stop them. The town I had visited 100 times for supplies, the grocery store where I bought coffee, the diner where I ate breakfast, the gas station where I filled my truck. All of it was burning. I am a fire lookout. I spent 7 summers watching for smoke, reporting the smallest column before it could become a disaster. Now, I watched an entire town burn, and there was nothing I could do but observe. Day 7. I saw my first infected on the trail. The hiking trail that led to my tower was 4 miles long, winding up from a Forest Service road through dense forest. I checked it every morning with my scope, a habit born from years of watching for hikers who might need assistance. That morning, I spotted a single figure on the road below, walking toward the trailhead. I watched it for over an hour, trying to determine if it was human. It walked into a tree and kept pushing against it, not understanding the obstacle, not trying to go around. It stood there pressing against the trunk for maybe 20 minutes before finally turning and wandering in a different direction. It was one of them. Day 8, the sound started. At night, after the sun went down and the darkness swallowed the forest, I began hearing things from below. Not animal sounds, something else. A low moaning that rose and fell on the wind, distant but unmistakable. I could not see anything when I looked down from the tower, just the black shapes of trees swaying in the breeze. But I knew they were down there. Somewhere in the darkness, they were gathering. I did not sleep that night. I sat by the window with my fire axe across my knees and listened to the sounds until dawn. Day 9. 3 of them appeared on the trail itself. They were about 2 miles from the tower, moving slowly uphill. I watched them through the scope for hours, tracking their progress, trying to understand their behavior. They did not seem to have a destination. They just wandered, stumbling over roots and rocks, occasionally falling and pulling themselves back up. But they were moving in my general direction, drawn by something I could not identify. By evening, they had veered off the trail and disappeared into the forest. I did not see where they went. I did not sleep that night either. Day 10. I took inventory of my supplies. Canned food for about 3 weeks if I was careful. Water was not a problem, thanks to the rainwater collection system my tower was equipped with. Propane for the stove would last longer than the food. I had a fire axe, a hunting knife, and a flare gun with 6 flares. No firearms. I had never needed one before. I began rationing immediately. Small meals, careful portions, nothing wasted. I calculated that I could stretch my supplies to maybe 25 days if I was disciplined. After that, I would have to make a choice. I tried not to think about what that choice would be. Day 11. I heard human voices for the first time in almost a week. I was scanning the trail with my scope when I spotted movement about a mile out. 3 people moving quickly, checking behind them constantly. A man, a woman, and a small child. They were heading toward the tower. I watched them climb for 2 hours, my heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. Hope because they were human, alive, proof that survival was possible. Fear because I did not know them, did not know what they might want, did not know if they were infected. Day 12. They reached the base of the tower. The man called up to me, his voice hoarse and desperate. His name was Tom Hendricks. The woman was his wife, Rachel. The child was their 8-year-old daughter, Abby. They had been walking for 5 days. They had nowhere else to go. I looked down at them from my cabin, 60 feet above. Tom was holding Rachel's hand. Rachel was holding Abby's. The little girl's face was streaked with tears and dirt, her eyes hollow in a way that no child's eyes should ever be. I hesitated. I thought about my limited supplies, my safe isolation, the careful calculations I had made about how long I could survive alone. Then I lowered the ladder. Day 13. The Hendricks family told me their story. They had lived in a suburb outside the city, a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew everyone and nothing bad ever happened. Then the outbreak reached them. They watched their neighbors turn one by one. They barricaded their house and hid for 3 days while the world fell apart around them. When the screaming stopped and the streets went quiet, they packed what they could carry and ran for the mountains. They lost their car on Highway 26 when the gridlock became impassable. They walked for 5 days through forest and back roads, hiding during the day and moving at night. They saw terrible things, people attacking each other, bodies in the ditches. A school bus overturned on a mountain road with small shapes still moving inside. Tom did not go into details about that last one. Rachel cried when he mentioned it. Abby just stared at the wall. Day 14. We adjusted to life together. The tower was not designed for 4 people. The cabin was cramped with all of us inside. Barely room to move without bumping into each other. Privacy was non-existent. Sleep was difficult. But there was something comforting about having other people around. After 9 days of silence and solitude, the sound of human voices felt like a miracle. Tom and I talked about plans, about where we might go when this was over. Rachel helped me organize the supplies. Abby did not speak much, but she drew pictures with a pencil I gave her, filling the margins of my old logbooks with images. Her pictures were of houses on fire, people with grey faces, a little girl standing alone in a dark forest. I did not look at them for very long. Day 15. I saw the horde. Through my scope, I spotted a large group of infected moving through the valley below. At least 50 of them, maybe more, walking in a loose cluster along the highway. They were following the road east toward the mountain passes. Driven by some instinct I could not understand, I recognized some of them. The mail carrier from Grayson, still wearing his blue uniform. A woman in a wedding dress, the white fabric now stained dark with something I did not want to think about. A teenager in a football jersey, one arm hanging at an impossible angle. I did not tell the Hendricks family what I saw. Some things are better not shared. Day 16. Tom spotted smoke on the northern horizon. It could have been survivors signaling for help. It could have been another fire. Tom wanted to investigate, to try to find other people, to build something larger than our fragile group of 4. I talked him out of it. The distance was too great, the terrain too dangerous, the unknowns too numerous. We did not know how many infected were between us and that smoke. We did not know if whoever was there was even still alive. Tom agreed to wait, but I could see the frustration in his eyes. He was not built for sitting still. He wanted to do something. Day 17. The radio crackled to life. For the first time in over a week, I picked up a transmission. A man's voice, weak and fading, reading coordinates for a military evacuation point. He repeated the message twice before the signal dissolved into static. The coordinates were over 100 miles away, across mountain passes and valleys that were probably crawling with infected. Tom wanted to try for it anyway. He said we could not stay in the tower forever, that eventually we would have to move. I argued that we would never make it on foot with a child. I argued that the message could be old, the evacuation point already overrun. I argued that the tower was safer than anything we would find out there. We agreed to wait and see if more information came through. I kept the radio on, scanning frequencies, hoping for another voice. None came. Day 18. Carl Pruitt arrived. I spotted him on the trail around noon, a single figure moving with the confident stride of someone who knew the wilderness. He reached the base of the tower by mid-afternoon and called up, asking if we had room for one more. Carl was in his mid-40s, weathered and capable looking. He said he had been a hunting guide before the outbreak, that he knew these mountains better than anyone. He had been moving through the backcountry for 2 weeks, avoiding the roads, living off the land. He seemed like exactly the kind of person we needed. I lowered the ladder and welcomed him in. Day 19. I started watching Carl more closely. He was helpful, contributing to camp duties, telling stories that made Abby laugh for the first time since she arrived. He shared what little food he had carried, never complained about the cramped space, always volunteered for the difficult tasks. But something was wrong. He kept his left arm pressed against his side, hidden under his jacket. He sweated constantly, even when the cabin was cool. He excused himself to be alone more and more frequently, climbing down the ladder and walking into the trees for long stretches. I pulled Tom aside and shared my suspicions. He did not want to believe me. He said I was being paranoid, that Carl was just tired from his journey, that we needed to trust each other if we were going to survive. I wanted to believe him. I tried to ignore the signs. Day 20. I could not ignore them anymore. I woke in the middle of the night to sounds of distress. Carl was on the floor, convulsing, his body shaking so violently that the entire cabin trembled. His jacket had fallen open, revealing his left forearm. The bite wound was black and festering, spreading up, his arm in dark tendrils that looked like poison working through his veins. It must have been at least a week old, hidden under his sleeve, slowly killing him while he pretended everything was fine. Tom grabbed Rachel and Abby and pushed them toward the ladder. I grabbed the fire axe. Carl stopped convulsing. He went still, his chest no longer rising and falling. Then his eyes opened. They were not Carl's eyes anymore. They were milky and white, empty of anything human, focused on me with a hunger that made my blood freeze. He lunged. In the confined space of the cabin, there was nowhere to retreat. Carl slammed into me, his teeth snapping inches from my face, his hands clawing at my shoulders. I swung the axe and caught him in the shoulder. But he did not stop. He kept coming, kept reaching for me, kept trying to bite. I swung again, and again, and again. I do not remember how many times. I just remember the sound of it, the wet, thudding impacts, the spray of something dark and cold that did not smell like blood should smell. Carl finally stopped moving. I pushed his body through the trap door and watched it fall 60 feet to the ground below. The sound it made when it hit attracted attention. I looked down and saw shapes emerging from the tree line. They had been down there all along, drawn by the sounds and smells of the living, waiting in the darkness. There were at least a dozen of them, circling the base of the tower, reaching up toward the ladder with gray, twitching hands. The siege had begun. Day 21. I counted 14 infected at the base of the tower. They milled around in circles, occasionally clawing at the steel legs, groaning up at us with that horrible sound that I still hear in my dreams. They did not leave. They did not wander away. They knew there was food above them. The Hendricks family huddled in the corner of the cabin, as far from the trap door as they could get. Abby had stopped drawing pictures. Rachel barely spoke. Tom paced constantly, looking for solutions that did not exist. Day 22. Our supplies ran critically low. With 4 people eating, even ration portions disappeared faster than I had calculated. I estimated we had maybe 5 days of food left, probably less. Water was still fine, but water would not matter if we starved to death. Tom talked about making a run for it, fighting through the infected to reach the trail. I told him it was suicide. There were too many of them, too close together. We would not make it 10 feet. We agreed to wait, to hope they would wander away, to pray for some miracle. Day 23. Rachel stopped eating. She sat by the window and stared at nothing, her face blank, her eyes empty. I tried to give her my portion, but she just shook her head. I think she had already given up. Day 24. The siege broke. Around midday, the infected suddenly moved away from the tower. I watched through the window as they shambled down the trail, heading into the forest. Something had attracted their attention, drawn them away from their vigil. Through my scope, I saw it, a deer, running through the trees about a quarter-mile away. The infected were pursuing it, crashing through the underbrush, disappearing into the forest. This was our chance. Tom did not hesitate. He started packing immediately, gathering what little supplies remained. Rachel came alive again, helping him, moving with purpose for the first time in days. Even Abby seemed to understand that something important was happening. I told them about a Forest Service cabin about 8 miles north. There might be supplies there, maybe even a vehicle. It was their best chance. I told them I was staying behind. Tom argued. Rachel cried. I told them someone should stay at the tower in case other survivors came looking for help. The truth was simpler than that. My leg had been bothering me for days, an old injury from a fall years ago that flared up when the weather changed. I could barely walk to the trap door without limping. I would slow them down. I would get them killed. Day 25. I watched them leave. Tom shook my hand and thanked me for everything. Rachel hugged me and sobbed into my shoulder. Abby gave me one of her drawings. It was a picture of the tower with a smiling sun overhead and 4 stick figures standing at the top. She had written our names underneath each one. I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. I watched them climb down the ladder and cross the clearing below. I watched them disappear into the trees, heading north toward the smoke on the horizon. I never saw them again. The infected returned that afternoon. There were more of them now, over 20, gathered at the base of the tower. like worshippers at a shrine. Day 26, new arrivals appeared on the trail. 5 people, adults, moving with purpose. They were armed with makeshift weapons, baseball bats, crowbars, a machete that glinted in the afternoon sun. They reached the clearing and looked up at me with hard eyes. The leader was a man with a shaved head and a scar across his chin. He called up and asked what I had. Food, water, weapons, anything I could spare. I told him I had almost nothing left. He did not believe me. They made camp at the base of the tower, ignoring the infected who wandered nearby. They killed the ones that got too close, clearing a perimeter, establishing control. Now they controlled access to the ladder. I could not come down without going through them. They could not come up without going through me. Day 27 was a standoff. They shouted threats and promises, told me they would wait me out, told me they would find a way up eventually. I showed them the fire axe through the window and told them I would kill the first person who touched the ladder. Neither side blinked. Day 28, one of them tried to climb up in the darkness. I was waiting at the trapdoor when his head appeared. I did not kill him, but I hurt him badly enough that he lost his grip and fell. His screaming attracted the infected, and in the chaos that followed, 3 members of the group were overwhelmed. The remaining 2 fled into the night. I do not know if they survived. I do not care. By morning, the base of the tower was littered with bodies. Some human, some not. The infected had returned in greater numbers, drawn by the blood and noise. I counted over 30 of them, more than I had ever seen in one place. Day 29. I ate the last of my food. I had water, but nothing else. I was weak, exhausted, running on fumes and stubbornness. I tried the radio one more time, cycling through every frequency I could reach. On one channel, I heard music. Just music, no voice. A classical piece I did not recognize, playing on loop. Broadcast from somewhere I could not identify. I did not know what it meant. I did not know if anyone was listening on the other end. I left the radio on and listened to it for hours. It was the first beautiful thing I had heard in almost a month. Day 30, I saw smoke rising from the north. It was in the direction the Hendricks family had gone, roughly where the Forest Service cabin should be. I did not know if it was a signal, an accident, or something worse. I chose to believe it was a signal. I chose to believe they had made it. It was the only hope I had left. Day 31, I made my decision. I woke before dawn and looked around the cabin that had been my home for 7 summers. The coffee mug I had used every morning, the chair by the window where I had watched countless sunrises, the spotting scope that had shown me the end of the world in terrible detail. I could not stay any longer. Starvation would kill me before the infected did. If I was going to die, I wanted to die moving, not sitting in a tower, watching the world rot below me. I packed what little I had, the fire axe, the hunting knife, a canteen of water. I took Abby's drawing from my pocket, looked at it one more time, and folded it carefully back in place. I opened the trapdoor and looked down. The infected were scattered around the base of the tower, maybe 15 of them. They swayed gently in the early morning breeze, their heads tilted upward, their dead eyes fixed on nothing. I lit a flare and threw it as far as I could. The red light arced through the grey dawn and landed in the brush about 50 yards away. The infected turned toward it, drawn by the brightness, and began shuffling in that direction. I climbed down the ladder faster than I had ever moved in my life. My feet hit the ground and I ran. The forest swallowed me within seconds, branches whipping my face, roots trying to trip me. I could hear them behind me, crashing through the underbrush, that horrible groaning sound getting closer. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I found a hollow log and crawled inside, pressing myself into the rotting wood, trying not to breathe. I heard them pass by, footsteps shuffling through leaves, that wet groaning drifting through the trees. They were close, so close I could smell them, that sickly sweet odor of decay. They did not find me. I stayed in that log until night fell and the forest went quiet. Then I crawled out and started moving north, toward the smoke, toward whatever remained of hope. That was 3 days ago. I am still in the mountains, still moving, still listening for any sound that is not the groaning of the dead. I have not found the Hendricks family. I have not found anyone alive. But I keep going because the alternative is giving up, and I am not ready for that. I spent 31 days watching the world end from 60 feet in the air. I saw the fires consume the towns. I saw the hordes grow larger every day. I saw the lights go out one by one until there was nothing left but darkness. I thought being above it all would keep me safe. I thought isolation was protection. I was wrong. You cannot watch the apocalypse forever. Sooner or later, you have to climb down and walk through it. If you are reading this and you are still somewhere safe, somewhere high, somewhere removed from all of it, enjoy it while it lasts. But start planning your descent, because the world below is not going to wait for you. Your supplies will run out. Your walls will start to feel like a prison instead of a shelter. And when that happens, you will have to make the same choice I did. Stay and die slowly, or climb down and take your chances. I chose to climb down. I chose to keep moving. I do not know if it was the right choice, but it was the only one I could live with. The smoke on the horizon is getting closer. I should reach it by tomorrow. If I can keep moving, if I can stay ahead of the things that follow me through the darkness. Maybe I will find the Hendricks family. Maybe I will find other survivors. Maybe I will find nothing but ashes and bones. Whatever I find, at least I will have tried. At least I will have come down from the tower. At least I will have stopped watching and started living for however long I have left. If you hear this and you are still alive, keep moving. Trust no one who hides their wounds. And remember that high ground is not salvation. It is just a better view of the end.